up, guys? This is going to be a good one. I kind of feel like this is resetting the entire podcast, and what I want to get into today is going to be really exciting for me to talk about, and hopefully very entertaining. I feel like we all have a hidden domain of joy that I almost like to see it as it's like our secret Eden, and it dates back to our very first moments of consciousness, and even honestly, probably even unconsciousness. But we come into this world already experiencing so many things, and physiologically or physically, or I'm gonna call it, and sometimes we don't even really realize the things that get programmed into us from a very young age. But that's what's so fascinating about life. The book that I'm working on right now is called Symphony, and I haven't really made a formal announcement, but I guess I'm announcing it now. But there's a really, really cool story that I won't share now, with the genesis of where this book kind of came from, the idea of it. But it's this idea that if you know classical music or a symphonic work, usually it's a variation of a theme, or it has themes, or it has some sort of subject, or whatever they call it, like a subject or a theme. And to me, I've kind of cultivated a way of looking at my life, of where there's this sense of what it's like to be me and to feel the world as myself, that carries a very distinct experience within myself that really no one else really experiences. And that unique experience, I think, is one of the most sacred things that we can ever conceive of. It's so pure. It invokes out of us just a sense of being alive, a sense of being seen, And I feel like, today we feel so unseen, and we want to be seen. We're so self-conscious with social media, and we're also so fast-paced, so that we're unfocused, so that even if we do get validation or affirmation, we can't enjoy it long enough before, for it to be any sort of lengthy conviction or understanding about ourselves. But we're off to chase the next dopamine high. Does it take much for me to get off subject? So where was I? Yeah, so I feel like our sacred individuality, our sacred joy, is almost like the subject or the theme that the symphony of our entire life, the masterpiece of the life that is us. I feel like our joy, our intimate individuality, and our way of really experiencing the world on such a profound level that only we can really understand and really appreciate. I mean, other people can feel, I think can feel when we're plugged into our own joy and our own sense of ease in ourselves. And so in that regards, people can know us kind of in a variant of different degrees, or of us being within our self, within our authentic self. But truly, only we can really know when we're not aligned. And our earliest memories and experiences carry such a potent experience of the world that when we're experiencing the world, we don't know in the moment that it's how precious our experience is of it. We don't know how to fully appreciate it until the experience is gone, and we have, like, years later, we look back and we're like, oh man, that was so wonderful, Sometimes I've had dreams where I've revisited memories, and they've been very, very potent and powerful. And it's really strange, because it's like I know what's happening or what is going to happen, but at the same time I'm experiencing it afresh, as if it's never happened before. It's a very weird feeling. Dreams are so cool. I have had a lot of experiences with dreams I'm going to be talking about on the podcast with with episodes ahead, because really this is kind of a resetting of everything. This is, in lots of ways, the first 10 episodes are kind of the first season of me kind of just finding my voice, finding the way that I want to communicate with people. And this is really the first that I want to get into my childhood, because my childhood is very, very unique. I give you just a few details, it'll explain all sorts of things. And I think it's going to be very entertaining for people that know me. When I was born into a family that was experiencing a spiritual revival or an awakening. And I'm the middle child. And out of all three of us, I really kind of, I guess, landed on Earth, speaking like I'm an alien or something. Maybe I am. So whenever I was born, my earliest experiences were with this experience of spirituality and religion that was very, very pure. It was everything was religious. Everything was spiritual. Everything was Christian. I would go to the grocery store. I would just assume that everyone, like the Snickers bar is Christian. Like everything was sacred. Everything had this purity to it that it's like I knew evil existed and eventually knew more and more a sophisticated understanding of the world. But I knew I was one of the good guys, and I wanted to be one of the good guys. And I wanted to be, it wasn't for me to see myself as better than someone. It's like I knew intrinsically that I was made to behold value within myself in a very, very deep way. And as I soberly receive this value, live from that value, and to give it to other people, and to live out of that. And even when I would have moments as a kid that I would act up, and I would I'd be somewhat rebellious, or I'd have an identity crisis, or I would have some sort of I'd bully someone, or I would I would just be a rascal. I'd be a comedian. One say, it's a kid, you're trying on all these different characters, and most of them are kind of cringe because you realize just how insecure you are. I mean, I didn't really bully a lot of people, but I had there was a few occasions where it was just evil. It was like I did something, and it's because I wanted an identity, and I felt like playing the villain gave me some sort of alternate experience of myself that I was growing tired of. But it was really intriguing to me. There would be moments sometimes where, I would be disciplined by my parents. But on occasion, the best times I ever was disciplined would be times where they actually believed in me as they were disciplining me. I remember one in particular. I had to be picked up from school. I can remember expecting the worst, and because I didn't get it, and because I got grace and understanding, it's like I can remember my mom looking at me, and it communicated, just in a glimpse, that you're better than this, and you're better than this. When we're kids, we're difficult, and I think if you probably try to discipline your child every time with that kind of grace, you're asking to get manipulated, or getting of them abusing that. This isn't parenting advice. At times, I was very impacted by this belief in something good that needed to be nurtured. There were very powerful experiences. There were experiences that really shifted my way of thinking about things, to really beginning to have this deeper relationship within myself about things, because those sort of that's sort of addressing of that deep dimension to you. I mean, it's hard to talk about. And whenever you feel there's an opportunity to be judged, your parent chooses to give you love and grace and to kind of go past some of the superficial, moral stuff or expectations. It's a very, very powerful thing. The beginning conditions of my life had such a potent experience of the world. The thing about my parents is that their spiritual conversion and their own personal revival was a very real thing. And what's going to be fun with this podcast is that there's going to be times where I'm going to be kind of against religion, and you're not going to know when that is. And then times that I'm for it, you're kind of not going to know when it is. I mean, I am a religious and spiritual person, but I have a very, very complex belief system. And I haven't heard really anyone quite have the same kind of belief system. And I don't know, I feel like I'm very uniquely qualified because my whole life having to deal with OCD compelled me to kind of go deep within myself, to go and unearth all these sources of strength that lay dormant within me. And I began to notice that we, as a society, have a lot of these areas of ourself that we repress. And I like to kind of refer to, I guess I'll call it for now, ego theory, where this idea of the ego, this idea that we create a persona that's acceptable to other people. And we do this at the expense of ourselves, even though we have to have some degree of persona and personality that we're expressing. I kind of like to I feel like now as an adult that the ego is actually like a wardrobe, that we have to cultivate different parts of ourselves that we can wear at different times, and we should never be stuck into one mode of being. We should be able to have a vast collection of authentic expressions of ourselves, of ourself, and our true self is kind of the transmission between the different ones. Kind of rests kind of in observation, in kind of a deeper awareness. So the branch of Christianity that my parents were having their revival through was a very experiential branch of Christianity. And I feel like in our family, and especially for myself, there was such a thick fabric of belief. It wasn't just a system that was rigid, even though it would eventually become that, and that would feed my OCD. Seeds of the solution that I would have to go to were already being planted, long before I would have all these different problems. There is this deeper understanding of a way of experiencing and looking at the world that was very, very, I like to call it mystical or magical even. It was there's times where just having this deeper dimensionality to who you are, you look at the world and you look at people differently. Everything has such value, and you're not even conscious or hyper conscious or overly conscious of the dark stuff. And again, there is a place for that. I'm a huge fan of confronting your shadow and that whole aspect of depth psychology that comes at a certain point in this conversation that I think I'll hold off for now. I would meet people that would really discuss a lot of the aspects of religious culture, and there'd be really good questions or really good observations that I think as a kid it seems rebellious, and yet I think that the natural mind has these questions about existence and our experience that becomes our strength at some point, or it's the source of us actually getting deeper understanding. There are certain spiritual perspectives and things that we can't fully grasp unless we've had the unique problems put on our plate for us to deal with. So some of my most profound uh, childhood memories involve this awareness of myself as being, and I noticed that as I began to work through some of my issues with obsessive compulsive disorder, that this understanding of myself, this awareness of myself, was something that I would repress at certain times, and especially as I began to seek approval and to begin to live up to standards and certain things that I felt were expected of me. And eventually, this caught up with me. Now, one thing I want to mention too is that from a very young age, I had a very keen kind of sensitivity to things. I always felt like I was a little more extra, like physiologically sensitive, and even mentally sensitive. I don't know if that's true, but it seemed like it. And so there was already within myself a sort of shame about being a little extra, not being as tough as I wanted to be. And I would kind of know this unconsciously, I think, with my when I play sports, because I really would be like intense with it. It's like I get angry about feeling weak or feeling like I wasn't as good as somebody else. I'd be hyper competitive, and that's something I still have had to work through. But this kind of hyper competitiveness didn't really, to me, it was more of a dependence on a very low dimensional view of myself. There was an ego that I constructed of myself that was this competitive, person that was playing, sports and being driven. There's a time where you let go of that and you transition to other parts of yourself. And for me, my hyper competitiveness never fully got dealt with. I kind of enjoyed having this Sigma male attitude where I'm kind of going to do it my way and I'm going to be better than everybody else. That definitely got me good in certain things in life, and it still has tremendous benefits because I have that dimension of myself. But there is something about that attitude that you see yourself in the world as in a way that it's not. It's funny. Lies have different forms. Okay, you can say a lie, you can tell someone a lie. Information can be a lie, but circumstances can also be a lie that invoke out of you a certain understanding, and you find yourself, if you go down those pathways that are untruthful, you become untruthful. You become a lie. And you're dealing with yourself. And all of a sudden, the truth of who you are, the truth of your deepest person, of what makes you feel alive and whole, that becomes repressed and you become somebody else. And when you divide yourself into parts, unless you have an integrating force that brings those things back together, you are going to devolve into being just operating out of a chunk or two. And the rest of yourself, because they were inconvenient parts of yourself, you didn't fully see how they actually function within the whole of yourself. You cut it off entirely. And at first, it seems like life's great. It helps you focus, helps you do, and then all of a sudden, you start having certain problems that you didn't originally know were going to come up in how you dealt with yourself. This secret domain of myself that involved my ego and involved my kind of hyper competitiveness, my insecurity in being able to experience the world as myself and learn to plumb the depths of myself and to explore myself, to actually enjoy myself, to enjoy who I was, and to allow these different areas of myself to become animated with my genuine joy of life. Instead of cultivating that, I began to cultivate, well, a secret life of plotting my course of life based on secret agendas and secret competitive narratives. It was one of those things where when I began to feel OCD and feel some of the obsessions and compulsions, well, in lots of ways, what I was experiencing, what I thought it was the problem. I thought my symptoms of OCD were the problem. And really, in lots of ways, our neuroses, our symptoms of mental disorder, it's our psyche and our body and our mind trying to operate with the amputated parts of ourselves and not being able to flow directly. And so what we think is the problem isn't the problem. There's a deeper need for integration and understanding the whole of who we are. And it takes a long time to understand your instincts. No one else can really do it but you. No one else can get inside your heart and soul and feel what you feel, see what you see. And it requires a process, embracing a process of becoming, that there is this person, this idea of who you are in wholeness. And there's this idea of really who you are that you're progressing to. You're always trying to maintain and become the ultimate expression of. Sometimes that's, according to our limited experience of ourselves. And what I wanted to open up with this first episode of the special that I'm doing here, I think we have to realize that our defectiveness and our areas where we feel something's wrong, it's not good enough for us to say, "Oh no, nothing's wrong. You're fine the way you are." Like intrinsically, if someone would have told me that, like, well, one, I'm neurotic. I have compulsive, all these different things. Like, it's one of those things where I knew I wasn't well. I didn't know how to correct myself. I didn't know how to have a honest, authentic conversation about who I really was. And we still struggle with this. We still struggle with how do we really know who we are. And in the process of my recovery, as I began to confront my religious background and confront my own religion, essentially, I began to see things in the Bible and in the New Testament in particular that totally opposes our modern Christianity and a lot of our modern notions of religion. The thing that spoke to me the most was this thing about that Paul talks about, that the strength of sin is the law. Basically, when you say don't do something, or don't think of a dog, you're going to think of a dog. It's human nature. And so there's these ideas that I began to see, like, I've never heard anyone talk about this. I spoke about moments of grace that I had with my upbringing that were very powerful for me. But there was also moments where I didn't get that. And especially when I went to like a private middle school, when I speak to a lot of people about the aspects of Christianity, there's such wrong emphasis on things. And when I was in middle school, there was like this system of discipline that they had in place, that it was just nonsensical. Like, it didn't make any sense at all. Like, you would find yourself in detention for things that were very, very innocent. And I remember at the time, it was so repulsive to me. And it was something that I found, it was absolutely, I remember I got detention one time for having a Tic Tac. It's like, what are we doing here? Exactly. My experience with OCD and the framework that I want to characterize how I really see the world through this kind of redemptive process of embracing the deepest parts of myself that no one else really knew but me. But it was up to me to put value on it. The last 3 years, especially starting with the pandemic, there was tremendous pressure put on where I was and where I am even now in lots of ways. That I began to really take a lot of these ideas more and more serious. What I've begun to really understand is that self-development is the ultimate art form. I've had these dreams where I've seen myself almost as this like art form. When I explain that right now, that doesn't make hardly any sense to probably a lot of people, honestly. But yet for me, that's like I have an experience attached to some of these dreams I've had, some of these experiences that are so, you can't really explain it from the outside unless you have your own version of it. And that's what I want to get really accomplished with this, is that everyone has their own version of this, and maybe even things that are significantly different. Maybe we all are kind of wired kind of slightly different, and that it's not going to be the same. But I want to help give us ways of talking about this that significantly value the miracle of the individual, because every individual is like a reality unto itself. There's a cosmology of your own mind and your own heart and your own ability to experience things. And so I hope this is engaging to people, because this is, to me, everything flows out of this. Everything, like the depth of your joy is what we're talking about here. The depth of the mystery of who we are. Sometimes we're so easy to be pleased. All we want is just to be kind of flatlined. We're not high, we're not low, we're just kind of there, and we're not really living for anything that's really epic, there's of something that really moves us deeply. And then you meet people that are really struggling, and you have to give them something that really works. And if I could kind of summarize and wrap up this episode, I've already gone way too long again. When I begin to experience OCD and experience essentially the instability of my entire life, not knowing what was true, what was false, what exactly, and still now navigating things. In the midst of all that volatility, I had to find real truth that for me was as concrete as this wall or as this microphone, something that in the immaterial soul became concrete. And because how we feel the world around us is almost the fundamental material of our life. It's like the immateriality of consciousness is actually the material by which we experience it and perceive every other material. And so the way that we actually sufficiently address our own perceptions and cultivate a way that we can allow our experience to become enriched by the way that we see the world. And we can transcend the limitation of who we are through the ego, through all the limited ways that we put ourselves in a box. We have to go to something deeper. We have to go to something to where we feel truth, but it's not merely an emotion. It's a perception. It's something that, in the root definition of who we are, we can test who we are. And there's an empiricism to our own philosophy that as we test ourselves and test the power of our own perception, that we discover what real strength is. It's like this. The more that I've let go of my own ego, I can actually experience anything and appreciate the good that's in it. When it comes to growing as a person, growing in my knowledge of anything, I have faith that I can experience anything and I can stay right and I can actually be in the midst of a situation. I don't have to go wrong. I can actually read challenging books. I can talk to challenging people. I can actually engage in a very open way. And it's almost like how my mom was with me. I can see into them something more, something better if I think they're wrong. But I'm not gonna also devalue their journey. They may have something that's actually that I need to hear, and everyone has something worthwhile to say. And so, all through my life, there's been little bits of pieces of how this thing all fits together, and just kind of scratch the surface.